Welcome to the Hangin Banners podcast with your host, Tyler Witt.
How about this block here by Tyler Witt? You're going to see him get out in front, and he's going to get a key block that springs this play.
Jack Coachman.
And here he is, having the time of his life.
And Ryan Sartori.
He may be short, but he's thick.
That's thick with two C's.
And welcome back to episode 2 of the Hangin Banners podcast. I'm Ryan Sartori. I mirrored my camera today. That is Jack Coachman. That is Tyler Witt. And we're ready for a big show, a new looking show, or maybe if you're just listening, a new sounding show. Last week, we kind of talked through everything with no real breaks, nothing to kind of chop it up and make it more palatable to the listener. This week, we've got some segments for you to try to break it up, make it, call and response, make it more palatable. And we're really excited. Gentlemen, welcome back. Good to see your faces.
Yeah, episode 2, we're here.
Tyler looks like, now, Jack, you looked at me cross a little bit earlier, but Tyler looks like Gandalf the White with his lighting, so that's good.
Yeah, the lighting's the big clarifier, because I'm like, yeah, Gandalf the White very famously was dressed in white, and Tyler's not that, but I do see it's very angelic behind you, so hopefully you've done some good deeds this week to earn it.
This is what Canada looks like up there, Tyler? It's like everything just angelic?
No, it's just that I picked a very good apartment with good lighting, so I get nice sun through all my windows throughout the day, and it's pretty bright in my house until right before the sun goes down, so it's very nice.
Yeah, natural lighting's good for seasonal depression, I hear.
I mean, when it gets cold up here, I've heard some stories, so better to be forward thinking in that aspect.
And for those just listening this week, Tyler's a big Shield guy this week. Got his NFL logo on.
Yes, currently wearing a long sleeve shirt that I received at a NFL mini camp that I participated in. So just repping the Shield today.
Now, do you have a connection? How do I get one of those Rob Lowe hats where I can just support the whole league? Is that something available at NFL Shop?
See, I don't know that, but I do know that they just hand these out for players. So
nice. You
can rep the Shield if you want.
I got to be a lot better at football then, I guess.
Yeah, you and I have a long way to go, Mr. Coachman. Okay, so I want to open the show this week with an ultimatum for you two. We can, number one, embrace debate and all discuss a certain topic, or we can talk about something that's kind of been irking me about the NFL this season, and I will let the two of you choose.
Oh, that's tough. I feel like we've got plenty of NFL talk, and there are many things that are going to irk. So I would lean embrace debate, but I'm going to say, Tyler, it's your call.
I'm for the embrace debate. Let's do it.
Okay, let's embrace debate. I was having a conversation with my grandmother about our heritage. We are Scandinavian in our heritage, and we got to talking about the Vikings. And so I really started to think, who's the best warrior? Like throughout the years, throughout the histories, do you guys think that there was a best warrior? The conversation kind of advanced to the point where we were talking about like Samoan tribes and things like that, and how great they must have been at not only land battle but also of the sea. Their naval skills must have been halfway decent because they were on an island. So I'm curious to see what you guys think.
I'll start us off. I think Spartan warriors are the best. I mean, from young age, they were just trained to be soldiers and fighting with grown men to just build toughness. Like, that's the grittiest kind of soldier that you can get. And I mean, the famous Battle of 300, that's a famous story, like not giving up till, I mean, they literally all died. So, I mean, not much more valor.
How great are you if you all died?
I mean, still, it's like the greatest. They held them off for how long? And then, just got overwhelmed at a certain point. But
sure.
I got to go with the Spartans.
All right, that's fair. All right, I'm gonna go tongue in cheek to start. I think the greatest warrior of all time is Steph Curry, and I don't think there's a question about it. I think he said
that was the angle I was gonna take too. I was going to say keyboard warrior, but
No, I think like there's no question that like our current society is more shaped by what Steph Curry has done than almost anybody else that will come up with, except for maybe, and I don't know about actual like on battlefield practice, but I feel like Sun Tzu deserves a shout because the art of war is really something that has influenced everything, every strategy, whether it's actual war, whether it's sports, like business, interpolitical relationships, like Sun Tzu's definitely up there. And then I guess the last one I could think of, Alexander the Great, I think was also considered one of the like best militaristic like battle type people. So that's my big three. It's Sun Tzu, Alexander the Great, and Steph Curry.
That's a good big three. I would say that if you're to be considered in this conversation, you at least need to have a college mascot, right? So like Spartans, we're good, right? Vikings, I'm sure there's a Viking out there, but also you can look at the NFL
Yep.
team. There's a
Cleveland
Viking,
State.
right?
Cleveland State are the Vikings.
Okay, perfect, right? Is that Maction?
No.
D2, I
Are
believe.
they D2? Anyway, you could throw a random college at me, and I'd likely ask if it was Maction.
There's
The
I think-
Aztecs. The
Yeah.
Aztecs have
Mhm.
a mascot. Like I feel like you must have at least a mascot in order to be considered for this conversation. I feel like I'm a bit biased if I were to say the Vikings were the best warrior, because they had their land skills, their land capabilities, but also their naval battles as well. I would also, of course, I also kind of blew my load here a bit early in saying that I had keyboard warriors on there as well. But if I were to round out my top three, I'd probably say Vikings, the keyboard warrior, and Tyler, I like the answer of Spartans as well.
Yeah. What else did we get in college? We also, I think, other one that comes to mind, Northern Kentucky, the Norsemen. I don't know
Yes.
necessarily the distinction between Norse and Viking. I feel like there's got to be some overlap.
Yeah,
So
there's
maybe
a Venn
like
diagram there.
yeah, maybe in your top three, like Northern Kentucky, if you're listening, you probably were in Ryan's top three also.
Yeah. Reps up for Northern Kentucky.
Yeah. Come on.
All right, gentlemen, that was a fun open, but we do have an odd week, a fun week, certainly, of NFL football to cover. I think it's fun. It's kind of cute that the NFL and the NCAA are kind of taking turns on who's having the crazier weekend. College football was fairly tame this weekend, a couple of exciting moments, but for the most part, the NFL had the craziest weekend of the two football leagues. Namely, the noon, like the early slate witching hour was a wild one to watch if you had it on Red Zone. The Dolphins, the Jets, the Giants and Panthers were having a who's worse off in that game. But I want to open this conversation with the Dolphins, and are they good?
I don't know. I have a tough time with this just because just their schedule that they played. But I mean, the performance that they had this weekend. I mean, Tua really came out, and even with 2 interceptions, 6 touchdowns. I mean, that's just unheard of in the NFL.
More than that, almost 500 yards through the air.
Yeah, absolute massacre offensively by them. I mean, they really took it to them, and I mean, they had a good performance overall. So I think we can say that they're good.
Yeah, I think that last year the story coming into the season in the AFC East was it's the Bills, and then who's next? Is it the Dolphins or the Patriots? This year it felt like the same thing. It was the Bills, and who's next? The Jets got a little bit more credit than last year, but I both last year and this year saw the Dolphins as a head above. I think that their ceiling has really been elevated by the addition of Jalen Waddle, the addition of Tyreek Hill, bringing in Mike McDaniel, who's a younger, more creative-minded coach. So I think the Dolphins are good. I had both the Dolphins and Ravens going 10-7 in the preseason. So this was a game that I expected to be close. I was surprised when it wasn't. And I think in the defense of Tua, people have been very critical over the last couple seasons that he's more of a short arm quarterback. And, there's criticism against high completion percentage, but low air yards output. And the fact that he had like 469 yards passing on a 72% completion percentage should quell some of those arguments that like you can get a lot of yards and be very accurate. And with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, even if a couple of them were a little underthrown, like the field is stretched beyond belief for Miami compared to the last 20 years for them.
Yeah, and if you have reservations, if you're the Dolphins and you have reservations about Tua's arm strength, which I don't know necessarily why you would. He was able to really air it out at Alabama, whatever. But if you have those reservations, you go out and you get two of the fastest guys in the NFL, and it really doesn't matter because then you're more worried about yak, right? Like the air yards don't necessarily matter. Just go let them run. Let them be track athletes on the field. Tyreek Hill, 11 catches, 190 yards. Jalen Waddle, 11 catches, 171 yards. I think that it was the first time that teammates had paired up for 10 plus catches and 150 plus yards for the first time since I don't know when.
I think where the misconception about Tua comes from is like the online presence that like the hate that he gets, and I think it has a lot to do with Barstool, and they built that narrative that Tua's like a bum just because he had some off years, and the Miami Dolphins have been a rough team the past couple of years. It's not to say that it's one person's fault in particular. I mean, it's a team game, and you need a bunch of different pieces to be remotely good. So
you could point to one person with the Dolphins, though, that person being their owner who was asking them to lose games, but continue.
That is 100% true as well. But but I think that's where you kind of get that perception that Tua isn't, people forget that how good he was at Alabama and what he's capable of. And then it does translate to the game. It's just you need the same pieces. Like Alabama's the best football team in college football, and not a lot of people can say different. And to go from that to one of the worst teams in the league, I would say, when he came out, I mean, it's just comparison, like, of different places.
Well, and people also forget, coming from Alabama, that Tua suffered a devastating injury in the postseason in college football. I think was it a hip injury or something?
It was a hip injury,
which
they're notoriously hard to recover from.
Right,
it's the Bo Jackson one.
He's in his third year. His first year was, not only was he coming in injured and his draft stock had fallen because of the injury, and he was battling, I wish I could remember, I think it was Ryan Fitzpatrick at the time who maybe was the quarterback going against, but it was like a quarterback debate. Do you give Tua the reins? So this is somebody who we haven't even really seen that full of a leash on. And I think, Tyler, you nailed it. You have to give a guy a chance to see. We've had so many quarterbacks fizzle out with less of an opportunity that now might never start again. And we've seen quarterbacks fizzle out with more of an opportunity that are still getting redemption chances as backups. So on the wide spectrum, this was a major win for Tua as cementing his status as a starting quarterback in the NFL.
On the joke side of this game, Mike Gesicki had one of the worst gritties we'll likely ever see in a game. It was adjacent to the Matthew Stafford Dougie from years ago.
I saw a tweet that said he hit the skedaddle. And I lost it because it looked like he was skiing for sure.
It was featured on Monday Night Football's Come On Man too. They had a pretty quick turnaround. I think it was RG3 that called him out and said, like, dude, if you can't do it, then don't do it. But when your team's coming back, when you're playing high, like, again, this is what happens on a team that hasn't seen this sort of success. Like, players are just going to go wild. So props on the effort, but definitely didn't stick the landing.
Yeah, also really good is that we found out in a post-game press conference with Mike McDaniels that now he is able to shower more because he's a head coach. He wasn't able to do that as much as the offensive coordinator, and now that he's a head coach, he has a little bit more time to shower. So he made sure to share that with everybody in the post-game press conference there. Other game I wanted to talk about was Jets and Browns. The Jets, going into the final 2 minutes of that game, had a less than 1% chance of winning against Cleveland, and yet they found a way. So, gentlemen, I bring the question to you. Is Joe Flacco elite? Your silence is deafening.
I mean, that doesn't deserve an answer, does it? Like, come on. That's such an old, tired thing. And speaking of old, tired things, Joe Flacco came back out of nowhere this season.
There it is. Yeah, he looked passable.
I mean, I think it's safe to say, like, in the state that he's in, the age that he is, like, I mean, he's a good backup quarterback, and he has experience. He's had success. I wouldn't call him elite. I would say he's slightly below elite. but he's a very good football player, and I mean, without a doubt, I mean, he's playing still in the NFL. But I just don't think you can call him elite.
Joe Flacco was elite adjacent, though.
Elite adjacent, I would say, for sure.
Maybe in the scheme of a backup. Good to have when a guy like Zach Wilson, who's your future, is not able to play right now, that like you can kind of cover it up. But it's important to note also, I think, that this is the equivalent of having like your high school quarterback work with like the local, YMCA kids. Joe Flacco's 37, and the top playmakers on the Jets are a first-year running back, a second-year running back, a first-year receiver, and a second-year receiver. So he's actually playing with people that are like 15 years younger than him. And I think if he can do it with these guys, the concern is, what does Zach Wilson look like when he comes back? I do remember, I think it was Garrett Wilson in the preseason had some comments, a wide receiver on the Jets, mentioning like, Joe Flacco's got it. Like, he's got an arm. And there were a couple questions of, why are you not pumping up Zach Wilson? Why are we talking about Joe Flacco? So it's good that Joe Flacco is able to stick in there for them. But we really, for the Jets' sake, need him to not be as good as Zach Wilson.
Especially me. I am a dynasty Zach Wilson owner. I need Joe Flacco to not be this good, or at least not make Zach Wilson look poor. But in this game, it's one of those games. It's more of a laugher. Like, it has more comedy to it than it does anything else, because I think right now the Browns in the past 8 years have gone from this underdog team that everybody wanted to win with Baker. Everybody liked Baker. They were trending in the right direction. And then they go out this past offseason. They move on from him, which is understandable. But in transition, they bring in who might be public enemy number one in the National Football League, and Deshaun Watson. So now everybody's kind of rooting against them, and they get paired in this game with the Jets. They should have won. All they needed to do was run the clock down, and instead Nick Chubb runs into the end zone and opens the door for this New York Jets comeback. Now, fantasy owners for Chubb are elated. An incredibly efficient day, 54% of snaps, 17 attempts, 87 yards, 3 touchdowns, but he also probably mismanaged the game clock a little bit, which we've seen a ton of early on this year. So all that to say that this is kind of a laugher game, in my opinion, kind of one of those comedy ones that we'll remember for a little bit. The best part about this game is when it is coming down the stretch, they show Kevin Stefanski on the sideline, and his 4 sons are standing behind him ready to go on the field and celebrate. And instead, they had to walk back to the locker room with their irate father.
That's a tough car ride home for them. It's like when in Little League, when you don't perform well and your dad's a coach, and you just kind of got to sit there and just be like, oh, well, I hope I don't get ripped today. Like any little thing, you're breathing too loud.
Yeah, the pumped up offensive stats with Nick Chubb definitely make the Browns look a little bit better here. I do think it's a good sign for the Browns and the Jets that, like, they showcase they can play offense, even if it's not against the best teams in the league. These are 2 franchises trying to turn it around, but with the coaching miscues that have taken place over the first couple weeks, definitely Kevin Stefanski has inserted his name into the, yes, Nick Chubb should have gone down, but maybe that also should have been more clearly communicated. I don't know that we know that the Browns are a team that has prepped for this sort of situation as much as they should in the last few years.
So speaking of coaching miscues, and I don't want to take away from segments later on, so if anybody's got Nathaniel Hackett stuff to throw into the show later, speak up now or forever hold your peace, because Denver and their coaching miscues, it is getting to a kind of comical level.
Wait. Actually, wait. I'm thinking about the segments later. I'm trying to think. So we've got 1, 2, 3. No, you know what? You can go ahead with this one. That's totally fine.
Okay. All right. I'll fire away. But Denver in goal-to-go situations right now, 0-5. And against, like, not great defenses. Like, we're seeing Seattle and Houston as their first 2 matchups. And they're 0-5 in goal-to-go situations with Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon as running backs.
It's tough to watch, and I mean, it's because you would think, like, and we've said this last week too. Like, you went out and you paid, you went out and got this new head coach. You went out and paid the quarterback for
almost $250 million.
Yes. You spent so much money to do that. And I feel like they're relying on him to make decisions, and he's just a deer in headlights. And it's kind of terrifying if you're a Broncos fan.
And that maybe the joke didn't land. I was trying to pull in Nathaniel Hackett on you, Ryan Sartori.
Oh, I get it now.
Because I think that's the biggest problem is we're exiting the let Russ cook era in Seattle, which is like just let this guy go out and do his thing, and like he can run a game for you, and you've instead put it in the hands of first-time head coach Nathaniel Hackett, who continues to waffle in big moments, not only making bad decisions or making the wrong decisions, but also the worst part is being indecisive, right? It's sort of that like any action is better than inaction, or like all press is good press. Like sometimes just picking the wrong thing is better than picking nothing. And he continues to put Russ in a situation where he can't manage the offense. And if Russell Wilson has lost a step, then he's lost a step. But we're only 2 years removed from Seattle Seahawks fans begging Pete Carroll to just let Russell Wilson do his thing.
We didn't talk about it last week either. I just want to bring it up and mention it, that the boos from Seattle were wild. I didn't quite understand that, but the Russell Wilson situation in Denver is interesting because, Jack, you mentioned he's a guy who can just manage the game himself. You really don't need to do a whole lot for him other than give him play calls, and he can usually manage. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He's certainly a top, would you still call him a top 5 guy, a top 8 guy? Certainly, right? He's up there. And it's just like, that these mistakes aren't his because we've seen him manage games. But the sequence that has been coming up a ton from this game was, I believe, coming down in the fourth quarter, the Broncos trailing the Texans at that point, like 9-6, or it may have even been tied 9-9 at that point. And Hackett didn't know what he wanted to do on 4th and 6, waits way too long, and they say, okay, field goal unit, go. They get him out on the field, and then a delay of game is called, and instead of, it would have been a game-tying punt. So the Broncos were still down. It would have been a game-tying field goal. Instead, it turns into a punt. So like a microcosm of what's happening in Denver right now.
And you can even, just to clarify on the sequence, you can even go a step further back and look at the fact that it was 3rd and 1 at the Houston 35-yard line in a 3-point game. And the play that they ran was an option sweep with their backup tight end. They pitched it to Andrew Beck running right with Javonte Williams as an option. They lost a yard, which set up the 4th and 2, and that's when, like you said, they bring out the field goal unit too late, moves back 4th and 7 at the 41. Well, now you can't go for it, and now it's a 58-yard field goal. And the last thing that this Denver Broncos team needs to do is attempt another obscenely long field goal in a situation where they could have just advanced the ball.
But he did learn. He did learn something. He realized, can't go for long field goal was probably written somewhere on his play sheet.
Which is unfortunate because they were at home. So a 58-yard field goal actually should have been more doable than a 64-yarder on the road. But it's just, it's that you had a bad play call on 3rd and 1. Like, yes, running your tight end, it wasn't even like any sort of power rush. It was a lateral designed sweep play with Andrew Beck. That, if that doesn't get you the first down, maybe you do it because you're sure that you're in 4-down territory, right? That would be the only answer. But then you bring out the field goal unit. So it's one of those, there are conventional coaching mechanics that we as fans have learned. And that's, go creative, go aggressive if it's 3rd down and you're going for it on 4th. But you have to know you're going for it on 4th. Otherwise, you're just burning a play, you're burning a clock. And it just, I really thought after we, grilled this guy last week, it was going to be the end. But it's an overreaction. I don't know if he makes it through a full season unless he turns this stuff around.
Honestly, Tyler, you're right. Like, deer in the headlights is exactly what it looks like. It looks like a dude who is petrified to fail instead of just like, I don't know, like Sean McDermott last night on Monday Night Football, they said like that they hadn't punted in their last 6 games or something like that. Like, that's a dude who's sure of what he wants to do, is all right taking risks. Nathaniel Hackett is clearly in a situation where, and I'm about to start calling him Nate. He doesn't even elicit the respect at this point to be called Nathaniel. For me to go through the process of saying Nathaniel Hackett every time is getting like, you know what I mean? He's Nate. Until further notice, he is Nate Hackett. And he's just somebody who is unsure what he wants to do and is unwilling to take risks. Go ahead.
See, I think that he does take risks, but they're just the most mind-blowing risks that like no one would think of. Like he's trying to get too fancy with it. Like he's trying to be 2 steps ahead of you. Like who does a tight end jet sweep?
Nate Hackett.
But that's what I'm saying. Like of all the receivers that you have on your team, there's got to be one that runs like a 4.3. Why do you give it to the big body tight end?
AJ Hamler was an option.
Well, and to be fair, they did lose Jerry Jeudy to an injury in this game, so that
Jew.
did change the
They
dynamic.
call him Jew for short.
That's not true.
Yes,
Is that
they do.
true?
Have you not seen the video? Have you not seen the video recirculating?
I'll have to look later.
There is a video that's been recirculating from his draft. He was at the combine and he was wearing a chain with the Star of David on it.
Oh, you know what? I did see this. Okay.
Jerry, are you Jewish? He goes, no, my last name is Judy. They call me Jew for short, so I just got a Jew star. Is what he said. He's like, I'm not Jewish.
My last thought on this Broncos team, they skated with a win in a game where, again, they blew it in a number of places, and it's amazing that they even won. That doesn't speak well for the Texans. But I think this is a team where the headline is going to continue to write itself. I haven't seen this anywhere, but I'm sure it had to have been used in Denver local media. If you guys are familiar with the phrase "a hack job," that's getting the job done at the expense of actual like quality and paying attention to the finer points. And I think that's the problem. Is Hackett says, "I need to start making better decisions. I need to start paying more attention." Why are you saying that? Like, what do you mean? I need to start making better decisions. This is the second week out of 2 that you said that. So it's infuriating because I think the Broncos should be good. I think they can be good. They've already had some bad beats on the offensive injuries end with Tim Patrick getting knocked out for the season before the year even started. He was set to be their third receiver. So this is a team where they could still bounce back because they are talented, but they have to get through their coach first.
I saw a tweet that encapsulates this team perfectly, and somebody said that the Broncos have Michael Scott as their head coach and the Great Gatsby as their quarterback.
I was actually kind of surprised. I didn't know until that last Monday night game how many of I think we mentioned this last week, how many of the Seahawks players don't like Russ, but that kind of feeds into that Gatsby thing that like is just sort of an enigmatic, like up in the stratosphere. That's a little too accurate for me to really get on board with it. Like it's too real.
I'm all for playing the open to the office every time a Broncos game starts. Like if it's CBS that has the Broncos game, screw playing the CBS open, just play the office theme.
All right, you gave me one more thought. The fans in this game started counting down the play clock.
Oh, yes.
When the Broncos were on offense. You do that in like football, basketball to mess the other team up. Like tell them the wrong amount on clock to try and force a bad decision. Now, Russ is going from Seattle where they had the 12th man, which was just the fans cheering to help them. This is actually like the Denver Broncos 12th man might as well be an assistant coach because they're letting them know how much time is left because they don't want their 5th delay of game penalty in 3 weeks. It's embarrassing.
It is embarrassing. And the local media asked him after a game, "Hey, you heard that, right?" He was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Does that help?" He goes, "It can." That's what they asked Russ. Anyway, the Broncos will count that as a win, and we have a new segment on the show that we are going to call Count Your Wins. And this is a best of the week concept where we're going to share something either from our lives, from sports, or from pop culture that we want to share as a win for the week. And so, gentlemen, if it's all right with y'all, I'll start. Is that cool?
Mm-hmm.
Go for it.
Okay. My win for the week is Sunday in sports. Obviously, we talk about this awesome day in the NFL with so many comebacks and so many great moments, but also Major League Baseball had a history-filled day. Tons of stuff happened, and everybody was focused on football. So Aaron Judge hits 2 home runs against the Brewers to reach 58. He is 3 shy of the American League record, breaking Roger Maris's mark of 61. At the same time, Atlanta's Spencer Strider, who's on pace for National League Rookie of the Year, is the fastest pitcher to reach 200 strikeouts in a career. He did that in just 129 and 2/3 innings. Additionally, and this one's kind of interesting, I think, Houston's Framber Valdez set a major league record with 25 straight quality starts. Find that interesting because there are so many pitchers nowadays who don't last that long, or teams aren't willing to let their pitchers last that long. And yet Framber Valdez, in an organization that is a fairly progressive one down in Houston, is still one of these guys that is just quality start after quality start after quality start. Lastly, Jacob deGrom sets an MLB record with his 40th straight start, allowing fewer than 3 earned runs. That is a major league record since earned runs were tracked starting, I think, in 1913.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
What a weekend in sports, Sunday especially.
Well, and all like you think about all the accomplishments, there are mostly pitchers outside of Aaron Judge. All of those guys are pitchers. And I mean, it just kind of shows like this is a pitcher's league. We talked last week about the adjustments that Major League Baseball is going to make to the league. I think it's partly because like this is a pitcher and defense dominated league. And they're like, again, trying to massage offense a little bit. Look at all the ways pitchers have just excelled this year. On top of that, too, I forgot to mention Sandy Alcantara from Miami tosses his 5th complete game of the season. He also eclipsed 200 innings, but he's the first pitcher with 5 complete games since Corey Kluber in 2017.
Wow.
It was a great day for sports.
Especially for the common fan, like Kluber was on, a very dominant team, franchise that was in their heyday. That Sandy Alcantara, and not exactly in that same limelight. So kind of cool to see a name like that jump up.
Yeah, certainly an up-and-coming guy, though. Sandy Alcantara is somebody that has been pegged by some this year to be somebody who can win the National League Cy Young. It is going to be the anchor, the ace of that Marlins staff moving forward. The guy is unbelievable and throws some absolutely insane pitches. I think he's one of those guys who throws the 100-mile-an-hour sinker, which is next to unhittable. Like, how do you hit that? How do you see that? And it's just one of those pitches that the only thing you're going to do with that is beat it into the dirt. So a big day in sports on Sunday. I hand it off to whoever wants to go next.
Tyler, it's all you.
Saw this in the Detroit Lions game this week. 6th year in the NFL. Dan Skipper is an offensive lineman, and he got his first start. And due to some injuries, he got elevated from the practice squad this week, kind of suddenly, and he had a hell of a game, and the Lions actually won. So it was like a really, really big moment for him and the franchise. And being in a similar position to him as being on a practice squad and knowing the kind of struggles you go through on mentally and, just trying to stay ready because you never know when your name's going to get called. It really, in his 6th year, he's done this for 6 years. He's just been around just practicing, and he finally got his time to shine. So I, really made my heart warm and really, provide a little bit of optimism for me being in a similar position.
And some love for the big guys, right?
Absolutely. And he's like the biggest offensive lineman in the league. He's like 6'10".
Jesus.
He started at guard. This dude is a freak. Like,
is that
huge.
Functional? As an offensive lineman, is 6'10" a functional height?
I guess it depends on your flexibility. That's what really it boils down to. Because if you could be 6'10" and just be stiff as a board, and it wouldn't really work because the leverage just doesn't work out. But if you're flexible, which I'm sure he is, he's been, professional athlete for some time now. So I think it probably works in his case.
Wow. Yeah, I know that this isn't, necessarily the say all be all of it, but I just, player that wasn't on my radar before I'm looking, and very high run blocking grade on PFF, pretty high overall offensive, especially on the Detroit Lions offensive line. So hopefully they find similar value that guy not only got his chance to play, but performed.
And a quick note on that too. I saw that story as well, Tyler. Dan Campbell sent Dan Skipper out to the media before any other player after their first win of the season. He was the first player to talk to the media after that start. So a pretty cool story there in Detroit.
For the big fellas.
Jack, count your wins this week.
We're still on Sunday. It was too big of a sports Sunday, but mine is a different sport than baseball, different than football. It was the champions of the WNBA, the Las Vegas Aces, won in 4 against the Connecticut Sun in the WNBA Finals. They just have some unbelievable talent. Chelsea Gray, Asia Wilson, both named to, I think there's some Olympic teams that were just named recently. And you're looking at Becky Hammon, who has just come over to the WNBA as the head coach of the Aces. This was her first season after having been an assistant under Popovich at the Spurs in the NBA for the last 7 years, I think it was. So it's just kind of cool also that Las Vegas, used to be a blacklisted market as far as sports entertainment went. And then they got the Golden Knights, and then now the Aces just moved there in 2018. So this is the city of Las Vegas's first professional sports championship as well. So congratulations to the Aces, congratulations to Hammond, and to Las Vegas as a city.
One of my favorite players in the WNBA, maybe my favorite player, is Kelsey Plum. And if you were watching any of the post-game press conference with Asia Wilson, she was enjoying herself and had clearly indulged at that point in celebratory champagne. And she was having just a moment on stage. And then out of nowhere comes Kelsey Plum with a boombox hanging off of her shoulder and interrupting stuff. And it was a really cool sight.
Yeah, so that's the big win, high profile win. There was a slight decrease in winning percentage. The Aces were, I think, top in the league 2 years ago, and they've added a couple losses each year. So even though they trended the wrong way, they got the W, and that's my W.
An absolutely electric team to watch. When I was in Vegas, I actually got to go to a game and watch them, and they set the WNBA record for most 3-pointers in a game, and it was unbelievable. Lights out.
I do have an honorable mention, and that is color analyst this year. We talked about Robert Griffin III last week. I have to bring up Mark Sanchez because he had one hell of a week calling the Rams versus Falcons game this weekend. He started off with a running back hitting a hole and said that one of the offensive linemen cleared that hole out faster than a teenager clears out their search browser history, which is kind of a mouthful, kind of a long one. He could have crafted it a little bit better, but definitely hats off for going for it. And then later in the game, Marcus Mariota falls down during a pass attempt and then gets up and completes it for a first down. And he called it the Lazarus Special, which I thought was a pretty good one.
That's a fun one for sure. I do want to enlighten on the first analogy that you alluded to. What was extra shocking to me is when confronted on what do you even mean by that browser search history, and Sanchez said, "I don't know. I just thought it was funny." So he didn't even know what he was saying when he delivered this line. Like, what a look behind the curtain. Either he knew what he was saying, and once he said it, he was embarrassed, or he had no idea what he was saying, and he's asking people to feed him lines. So I'm worried about the Lazarus Special because I don't know if he thought of it himself. I hope he did.
Producer.
Right. I wonder if he's got somebody who's like, hey, here's a good line. Here, I thought of one. I mean, Ryan, you and I have talked in the past about broadcasting. Like, you want to do things live, but sometimes you've got to kind of arm the artillery with a couple lines, wait for the moment to arrive. But you have to know what you're saying means. You can't just say things, get asked, what does that mean? And go, I don't know. It just sounded funny. Absolute all-time embarrassing broadcast moment.
He's got a ghostwriter. Mark Sanchez has a ghostwriter. And Jack, you're right. I'm filling out spotting boards for a game that I'm calling this weekend. And there's some names in there already where I'm just kind of like working through it in my head. I'm like, okay, how am I going to talk about that name? Because it's an interesting name. Like, how am I going to work that into a broadcast or whatever? But yeah, sometimes you think about it. A lot of times you want to be unscripted, but Mark Sanchez might have a ghostwriter. On to the next segment. This one is called Intercepted at the Goal Line. This is a worst of the week where, again, the above applies, where we can do something from our life. We can do something from sports, something from pop culture. Jack, I will let you start if you would like to, sir.
Yeah, I think it's important that we also cover the fact as like a bit of a disclaimer, and we might mention it going forwards, to be very careful and responsible when gambling in any way, whether that's betting on sports, which we'll mention often on the show, whether that's fantasy sports, whether that's, trip to the casino or horse racing, whatever it may be. Like, there are so many different ways to bet, and obviously that could be a dangerous and addictive practice. So my Intercepted at the Goal Line is actually kind of a more serious one. I was reading up that there was a major gambling scandal among like YouTube streamers and Twitch streamers in the past week or so that came to light. That there was a high-profile YouTube content creator who sort of scammed his viewers along with other content creators for a ton of money to cover up for gambling debts of his. And so he essentially defrauded an innumerable amount of people for varying amounts. And it has just driven a conversation that, what sort of in the content creation world, whether that's live streaming, whether that's podcasting, whether that's, just what you put on Twitter and Instagram, like should places like YouTube and Twitch even allow things like gambling to be so front facing? Because that is an allowed thing on their platform. And the dangers of it are if you get in a bad spot, all of a sudden you're damaging the people around you. So I know that's a very dour note for our podcast, but we're going to continue to talk about, betting advice and betting tips. And obviously the one trump card over everything else is like, stay within your limits, get help if you need help, and obviously be responsible and know that like this is something that can cause big problems. And we saw it in, pop culture just this last week.
That's interesting. So I'm obviously not asking you to out anybody or whatever on this massive podcast and platform that we have. But a YouTuber was defrauding people of money. Interesting.
Yeah,
because this person was in gambling debt, or because
yes. So this person, the creator in question, was in deep gambling debt and essentially reached out to people, telling them things along the lines of like, "Hey, I'm in a pinch, I need some money," or like, "Hey, can you loan me this? I'll pay you back," which is like textbook. It's almost like your 90s PSAs about like, don't do drugs, don't gamble. Like, you almost kind of think it's funny because like, oh, if somebody asked me, obviously I would say no. Like, I'm not going to feed that habit. But at the same time, like if it's someone you care about or somebody you're friends with, it's very easy to lean into that. So just to keep an eye on yourself and the ones around you.
Interesting. Okay, Tyler, you're up next.
My interception at the goal line was my Saturday as a football player, football watcher.
My God, this was awful.
I was in the worst place on Saturday. I had to stop watching football. Literally, I could not do it. Even Sunday, I was very leery to watch games. I was very like, this can't get better. For those of you, I've mentioned this before. I played football last year at Purdue University, and for the 5 years before that, I was at Western Kentucky University. Both of them had the 11 a.m. slot on Saturday, playing some pretty big teams. Purdue was at Syracuse, so it was it was an interesting road game for them. And then Western Kentucky was playing Indiana, who was our rival at Purdue. And both of the games came down to the line, very last play. They both ended at the same exact time, and both teams lost in the most gut-wrenching way. Purdue went down and scored to take the lead with under a minute left. They got two unsportsmanlike conducts that moved their kickoff back. So Syracuse got the ball around the 40, 45-yard line, and they went down and scored.
Was it in the Purdue game that somebody kicked off from the 35-yard line?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It was. So that happened, and then WKU was up pretty much the whole game against Indiana. They go down, they kick a field goal to win it. The kicker misses. They go into overtime. They go to kick another field goal. The kicker misses it again. Indiana goes down, kicks the game winner. I thought my horrible day of football was over, but it had only just begun. I then took a break from the TV and went to meet up with some of my teammates to watch the Winnipeg Blue Bombers game.
Which you are a part of.
Which I am a part of. I am a member of the team. We got together. We got some food, had a drink or two, and we watched the first half of our game, and we got just curb stomped. Like it was pretty bad. Just not characteristic of us as a team. Obviously, we preach a lot of different stuff, and it just didn't come out the way we wanted. But that was another very tough thing to watch as as a player and a fan. I just had my heart ripped out of my chest in the morning, and then the rest of my internal organs came out of me after the Winnipeg Blue Bombers lost. So it was brutal.
And then you contacted me after after Winnipeg lost, and you're like, "This has just been an awful day. I can't believe how many football games went against me. All my allegiances have just completely gone to the shitter today." And I said, "Well, okay, that's fine. Let's turn our sights now to Cal versus Notre Dame, where your former teammate Jack Plummer is playing the Fighting Irish, and Cal's in a position to possibly win this game. He goes to lead a game-winning drive, and the first throw of the game-winning drive is tipped in the air and intercepted, and just again rip that scab wide open. And then on top of that, the Bears lose to the Packers on Sunday night. So it's Tuesday now. Are you feeling any better?
I am feeling a little better. No, we're off this week, so I'm on my bye week. I get a little rest, relaxation, get to
nice little break.
Yeah, so I mean, just taking this time to get the good vibes back, get all my energy back from the horrible pain that I suffered, and I'm ready to go this week for sure.
Awesome, recharged and ready to go. So my intercepted at the goal line this week is my pick for start of the week on our Sunday show, which if you're unfamiliar, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Hangin Banners. Every Sunday at 10:30, Jack and I do a show where we cover our stardom sit-ems, our picks for survivor pools, and also we figure out ways to make you a little bit of money as well with our picks of the week too. So be sure to follow us on Instagram for that content. But my start of the week was kind of a tandem of Paris Campbell and Nyheim Hines. Now, I will say Paris Campbell did play 86% of the snaps, so I'm not extremely embarrassed about that, but Nyheim Hines saw 30% of the snaps. Combined, the two players had 7 targets, 4 catches, 37 yards, and 1 rush for 0 yards. So it was I was no Nostradamus on Sunday. You're muted, Jack.
I think it's important to point out too that Paris Campbell did not account for any of those touches or yards, just 2 of the targets. That all of the actual production that you mentioned was all Nyheim Hines,
who played 30% of the snaps.
Right. So no, it was, but we had some good hits. We got some praise in our fantasy football league. People that tuned in and said, there's some good picks. So just know that with the losers, we also had some very correct things too. It's not all
Greg
bad.
Dortch.
Yeah, Greg Dortch. So if
you were not we, but you were on Greg Dortch a week before all the other fantasy football heads.
I mean, it was a bit of a dart throw, but he is looking good. I think he actually might earn himself more rotation time, even when Rondale Moore's healthy again. But no, definitely tune in and digest our advice, right? You don't always have to follow it to the letter because sometimes we're not right. But when we are right and you don't listen, that's on you.
That's 100% on you. Okay, on to the next segment. This is a segment called Blank You Very Much, where we have a prompt and we fill in the blank. You've probably seen this on shows before, pardon my interruption too. But this is Blank You Very Much. We start with the topic. We all answer and fill in the blank. Our first question, gentlemen. The Colts getting shut out by the Jaguars means their season is blank.
I'll take this one first because I had a really bold prediction that they were going to win the division, and this was very disappointing to say the least. I have Matt Ryan as my backup fantasy quarterback, so I didn't suffer from it, but just watching the progress unfold. 3 interceptions, 195 yards only, and I mean just absolute beatdown they took from the Jaguars, who's a team that's still struggling to define themselves and come into their shoes with a new staff. And they're, it was just, I think they're done. I have to chain them. There's no coming back.
Well, you know what? You've had too many bad beats in the last few days in your football life. So let me pick you up. I'm going to say that I'm filling in the blank with the word fine. I think their season's fine. I think if we've learned anything these first 2 weeks, it's that everybody in the AFC South is bad and nobody is out of contention for the division title. It is very concerning that Matt Ryan had some really, really errant passes. He was also missing maybe his top 2 receivers, maybe 2 of the top 3 in Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce. So I still am confident that the Colts can win this division. Although if we, go back to episode 0, I had them winning the division with a losing record, which feels like it's even more possible now. So maybe not a dark horse Super Bowl candidate, Tyler, like you originally thought, but I think their season is fine. I think they can easily win, 3 or 4 games in the division, and that might be all it takes here.
I fill in the blank with hanging on by a thread. Because this is definitely not the way they wanted their season to start. But Jack, you bring up the point. They play in the AFC South. They're going to have matchups against bad teams. We have no idea what Tennessee is going to be this year. We're fairly certain that Houston is not a good football team that found a way to hang tough. We're fairly certain that Jacksonville is a bad football team, but somehow they just came out and absolutely shut down the Colts. I think you can mostly blame that on the fact that they, like Jack said, were missing their top 2 or 3 wide receivers, and Jonathan Taylor had an uncharacteristically bad day. But I say hanging on by a thread because their next 3 games are at home against Kansas City, at home against Tennessee, who we don't know what they are yet, and then at Denver. They have a real chance to start the season 0-4-1. So hanging on by a thread is my answer for what this means for the Colts after being shut out by the Jaguars. Or Jaguars, if you're that guy.
Jaguars. I like that. That's the luxury car, right? Jaguar.
Yeah. Well, there are people out there who refuse to say Jaguars because it's not proper English.
Wait, you just said Jaguars, right? You're saying there are people who refuse to say that?
Yeah, Jaguars.
Oh, I think Jaguars is what I'm looking at.
Jaguars? Is it Jaguars?
Look at the spelling, dude. Where's the wire? Yeah, all right. I'm filling in the blank with a spell check next time.
Got it, Jaguars. All right, next question. Mike Evans and Marshawn Lattimore is a better rivalry than?
I'll lead this one. This Saints affiliated game, as a Saints fan, definitely saw Mike Evans rightfully suspended when Marshawn Lattimore was not, seeing as he was significantly the aggressor in the situation and did the classic "don't leave the sideline to join the fight" type thing.
What do you want him to do, Jack? It's Tom Brady.
Yeah, right. That I don't know how that didn't just summon a get out of jail free card. But this blank is gonna get filled in by Andre Johnson and Cortland Finnegan.
Ooh.
I think that is one of our go-to examples in 21st century football rivalries. Houston Texans wide receiver Andre Johnson, Tennessee Titans cornerback Cortland Finnegan had one very famous instance of actual fist fight where their helmets came off and punches were thrown in one meeting between the teams in 2010. Andre Johnson actually recently said on Brandon Marshall's podcast that fight was just a product of like 3 years of butting heads, and he said Andre Johnson was kind of a go about his business, quiet player, but at a certain point it boils up. Enough is enough. So that's a very famous fight, but they didn't actually fight as much as I think we remember them doing. It was really just that one major incident. Whereas Evans and Lattimore have butted heads before. Mike Evans, similar to Cortland Finnegan in this situation, is no stranger to being fined prior to this and probably will have run-ins again. It's just sort of his personality. And it's not bad. You like that sort of, dynamo feeling if you're Tom Brady and, oh, my guy's got my back. But I think that if we're talking about receiver and cornerback rivalries in the 21st century, give me Andre Johnson, Cortland Finnegan, and a few notches up, I'll take Evans and Lattimore.
Yeah, and I'll put just underneath Evans and Lattimore. How about Anthony Miller and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson? A little deep cut for you there.
Dude, the Saints wide receivers have Saints players, I should say, Saints defensive backs have a way of getting receivers ejected from games, and we see it with Evans, and then we saw it with Anthony Miller. I already love the pick, but let's hear the explanation.
Well, both players are nowhere near as good, and there was 2 installations. I think, was that our third installation of Evans and Lattimore, or was that the second?
This was, I think, the second time that they really got into a fight level thing,
right?
But they have matched up, I think 10 times now. 11 times.
And on the same weekend as the third installation of Canelo and Triple G, what a great time to get our second matchup of Evans and Lattimore. It was great. But no, I struggle to find a great answer for this. So I had written in Anthony Miller versus Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Tom Brady versus tablets. Which, he owes somebody some money for a tablet. And also Bears versus Packers. I think this is a better rivalry. Because at least you know that somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose in the Evans-Lattimore thing. Like when the Bears and Packers play, no matter how excited you get as a Bears fan, always remember the Packers are probably going to win.
Yeah. It's a tough pill to swallow every year. But we do it twice a year. And it's awful. For me, I kind of took this a different way. I said Mike Evans and Lattimore is a better rivalry than Floyd Mayweather and 50 Cent. Just for the comedic aspect. Mike Evans, what really got me laughing was the Mike Evans close-up of him mouthing, "It's Tom Brady. What do you want me to do?"
Right.
Because it's, as a player, like, that's exactly what you have to do in those situations. And then I saw another clip of Bruce Arians was on the sideline for some reason. He kind of like gave him the nod, like, go get him. Like just a lot of comedy like coming out of this.
Bruce Arians, Mike Evans' handler.
Yeah, right. It's like a dog trainer just like, fetch, like, go get it.
Yeah,
We never really knew what was meant by senior football consultant, but I guess we have the answer now. It's the who can I afford to, that was a turning point in the game. The Buccaneers found out they didn't need Evans, and they stormed and just stomped all over the Saints in the second half. So maybe that was an Arians result.
Yeah, he's a fight scheduler. Is Arians' job description in Tampa Bay now?
His fight pimp.
Fight pimp. Yeah. Well, it's kind of a WWE deep cut as well, right? Remember the Undertaker in his beginnings had like a handler of his urn and anyway. Last one for blank you very much. And you have to think back almost a week ago at this point, gentlemen, but Justin Herbert finishing Thursday Night Football makes him blank.
Like that. I think that it makes him, I think it just shows the grittiness that he has. That, I mean, he made it a game still. Like, he came back, and I think the fear of God was put into the whole Chargers fan base when Chase Daniels was trotted out there. But
damn it, did he look good on that head?
It's Super Bowl champion Chase Daniel to you, Tyler.
My apologies to Mr. Daniels. But, I mean, just the amount of toughness that takes, he's definitely got some broken ribs, and that's miserable. You're suffering through that, and to continue to go out there and just get hit and finish that game for his teammates to try to get a win because they know of what they have in that as a team. I think it just says a lot about him, and I think it shows that he's him, that he's going to be one of those guys that he's, like we said, he's going to have a big year, and I think that really just kind of kickstarts it for me. As someone who didn't really believe in that.
I'll go next. I think finishing Thursday Night Football makes him a hero, but a dumb one.
Oh, okay.
Like Ant-Man. I think that everybody knows that winning in the AFC West this year, especially against divisional foes, is going to be something that is paramount to those teams. It could be a matter of a game difference that come week 17 or 18, however many weeks we have now, it could be the difference is one game, right? It could be a week 2 matchup that the Chargers lost against the Chiefs. But at the same time, it's week 2. You have an entire season in front of you. Let's say something else happens other than broken rib cartilage to Justin Herbert. Congratulations, you just shelved an entire season rather than just conceding for a week and hoping that throughout the course of the additional 15 weeks, you're able to make up ground.
All right. Well, I'll slide in on number 3. Then I want to make clear that you guys both have good points on, playing through injury has obvious risk to it, that you could get hurt worse or hurt again. So please do acknowledge the levity when I say Justin Herbert finishing Thursday Night Football makes him safer. This is not as a product of him not getting hurt. But if we've learned anything with the Chargers, it's that you want to stay as far away from the Chargers doctor when you have a rib or lung injury. And if you feel something wrong, the last thing you need to do is see the guy who is currently in a battle with Tyrod Taylor over puncturing his lungs incidentally years ago. So
Yeah.
I didn't have a great answer for this, and the best I could come up with is if I'm Justin Herbert and they say, "Ooh, those ribs don't look good. Why don't you head over to the blue medical tent?" I am sprinting back on the field to save my career.
I'm all right. I'm good. Yeah. So, I mean, again, you have to think back almost a full week at this point, but it was kind of wild that he had a 3rd and 1 very clearly pick upable. He was right there. All he needed to do was scamper a few more feet. And instead of that, chose to just rip the ball out of bounds because his ribs were hurting that bad. But that concludes Blank You very much. I had a really, really good time with that segment, gentlemen. And that was a Jack Coachman idea. So, of course, big brain Coachman over there. Thanks for that one, bud. A new segment called Low Hangin Fruit, where this is kind of something that we picked from pop culture or sports that's begging to be made fun of. And gentlemen, I have 2, but I want to start with Mr. Brett Favre. This is kind of an interesting situation. I promise it as a joke at the end. Brett Favre is currently in the midst of a civil lawsuit along with former Mississippi Governor Phil Bryant. This is a part of one of the biggest, it is actually the largest public fraud case in Mississippi state history. Around $77 million were siphoned from the state's welfare funds. Why is Brett Favre involved in this? Well, through an organization known as the Mississippi Community Education Center, he was able to secure $5 million to put towards building a new volleyball stadium at Southern Mississippi, his alma mater, which also happens to be the alma mater of former Mississippi Governor Phil Bryant. Why would he give money to build a volleyball stadium or a volleyball facility at Southern Miss? Well, in 2017, when this all occurred, Favre's daughter was playing volleyball at Southern Mississippi. So it really has evolved into kind of a more serious situation for Mr. Favre. But I am here to tell you that I think that now with this scandal securely under his belt, Brett Favre can be likened to former President George Bush. I think that there is a correlation to be made. Both have the Southern charm that makes you feel like they don't know any better. Both had understudies who were probably the real stories or the real stars in the real stories, right? Aaron Rodgers, Dick Cheney. Both are known for airing it out. Both are remembered fondly, but most forget about their marred pasts. And both have been a part of some scandal, right? The Florida recount for George Bush and others. And then Brett Favre, dick pics and public fraud.
Wow. Yeah, no, this actually, I mean, this is something we're going to continue to find more about. This was a huge, huge story. They've been building this up for a couple of years now. And I think there was a stat I saw that's like, of people who applied to like access that welfare fund, like families in need, I think 1% of them got accepted to actually receive welfare funds that then all get funneled to Brett Favre. So this is like very, very bad look for Brett Favre, definitely. And I think some of those comparisons are surprisingly accurate. So we'll see. I'm sure there will be more news on this, and I'm sure there will come a grace period in which we might be in it now, where some of these lighter jokes are allowed, because Brett Favre, he played the card of, oh, I didn't know any better. There's even a text that got exposed where he said in text, how can we do this so the media doesn't find out?
Yeah.
So you do know that what you're doing is wrong, even if you don't know what you're doing. So there's a little bit of that like bumbling large scale political scandal going on with it, but at the same time, it also is very tragic. So we've got two sides of the
and
sword.
might I add that I realize this is tragic for millions of Mississippians who were not able to access these funds that could dramatically impact and improve their quality of life living in the state of Mississippi, which I find tragic. But the thing I think that you can kind of poke at and make fun of is Brett Favre, and like you said, this bumbling idiocracy that he is kind of centered in the middle of right now. I see we have something about the Adam Levine scandal. Who brought that to the table?
That is me.
Tyler, let me hear it.
Scrolling TikTok the other day, and I came upon this video. This woman named Summer Stroh, she's an Instagram model. She just came forward and revealed a bunch of DMs between her and Adam Levine, that is the lead singer of Maroon 5 and married with children to a Victoria's Secret model.
Oh.
Yeah. So she revealed that they had like a year-long affair, and then they shut things down. And Adam Levine recently reached out to her asking if it would be okay to call their next child Summer. Yes, she had the physical DMs to prove this and shared with me on TikTok. So an absolute bombshell of a video to see just perusing the internet one day.
This is wildly upsetting, Tyler, because you think that somebody's safe. You think that a star is okay to root for. Adam Levine doing something like this is like finding out that Ryan Reynolds isn't actually funny. And like the things that he does aren't like purely sarcastic in nature. This is absolutely world shattering. But at the same time, what the hell?
Well, we got to learn. It's celebrities. I mean, this is where we're two for
Just
two
like
now.
us.
I can't. Unfortunately, my low-hanging fruit won't continue the trend. But the fact that we've got Brett Favre and Adam Levine both not understanding the permanence of digital messaging, like it will come to light. The person who you contacted can expose you. Independent investigators can expose you. We know that you can accidentally expose yourself, as we saw with Alex Jones' legal team a month or so ago. Like, if you put it in writing, it will come out. Oh,
At the same time, this is not Brett Favre's first time learning this key lesson about the internet. If you put it on the internet, it will likely come back to haunt you if it's bad. Oh, that's awesome, Tyler. Thank you for bringing that to the table. Jack, tell me you got some low-hanging fruit.
I mean, mine's I would say almost even lower hanging than this. I was recently scrolling through Twitter. There's a new TikTok trend. I'm not on TikTok, so I haven't actually seen it, and I was too afraid to click any of the videos. There's a new thing that people are making called Sleepy Chicken. Have you guys heard of Sleepy Chicken?
I have not.
I have not.
So what people are doing is they're deciding to cook chicken, but they're going to boil it in NyQuil. And the FDA released a statement today that said, please do not consume NyQuil in this way. Please be careful because the vapors will alter the medical effects that it has. And this is a trend that should be stopped, which brings us back to a couple years ago when the Tide Pod Challenge was a thing. And it was cool to be part of the in-group and do something wildly dangerous to your physical health just for, these little bursts of happiness.
We have NyQuil chicken, the Tide Pod Challenge, and also the President of the United States telling people to drink small amounts of bleach.
And just like what? And this will come back later in the show when we get to a future segment. But it's one of these. You have to wonder, what did we do to get to this place, and how do we leave it? How do we as a society grow from this experience? Because I thought we learned from that Tide Pod Challenge. But we didn't. People are now, and there are videos of people pouring liquid NyQuil into like a frying pan with a chicken breast to make sleepy chicken.
Now, if they really wanted to increase the effects of sleepy chicken, they would do it with turkey because tryptophan has got to make this a better experience.
It's a 30-year slumber that you're just prepping for. Hibernation to the max.
So what do we got? Our lessons are don't send explicit pictures to people who don't want them. Don't steal money from people who need it. Don't send things you wouldn't want your family to find out about. And don't mix medicine with food for the sake of the internet.
I know we're running a little long too, but I've got one that I think will just send us over the top with the madness that we're sharing right now. For those unaware, this is a great one. The chief operating officer of Beyond Meat was arrested Saturday after allegedly biting a man's nose in a parking garage near Razorback Stadium in Fayetteville, Arkansas. According to C.C. McCandless of KNWA Fox 24, Doug Ramsey was charged with terroristic threatening and third-degree battery. Per McCandless, Ramsey was attempting to exit the parking garage when the driver of a Subaru made contact with his vehicle's front tire on the passenger side. Witnesses said Ramsey then exited his car and punched through the back windshield of the Subaru. That led to a physical altercation between Ramsey and the Subaru driver, during which he allegedly bit the person's nose.
I didn't read too much into this story, and those details are like unbelievable. I did see a lot of the jokes write themselves on a man who's Beyond Meat again is substitute meat products, and I believe most of, if not all of their board members in front office are self-proclaimed like vegetarian, vegan, biting a human, which is definitely meat. So that was the way that I had seen it. But I mean, you know what? If you're gonna go after someone, you don't have to wait for them to get out of the car. If you just punch through the back like that. That I would never even have thought of that as a possible move.
Just well, and at this point, with the thought of punching through vehicles and ripping people out and biting them, I'll transition to our final segment of the show, Hang Your Banner, where I see Tyler, you have something about GTA, which I think kind of coincides.
Yes, so to try to get away from it, but not necessarily. This past weekend, a hacker hacked into Rockstar Games, the company who makes Grand Theft Auto, and released some early access stuff about GTA 6, which has been a long time coming, and we're still waiting for God knows how long before it releases, but he released gameplay, several different like plot points where the game is taking place, which is Vice City, which is one of the original, one of the early games of Grand Theft Auto took place there. And I just thought it was electric that someone had the balls to hack in there after. And I'm just trying to like get into the guy's headspace, right? The guy's just sitting there one day and he's like, you know what? I've had enough. I'm done waiting. I'm done waiting for this game. I've waited years for it. And he just went out and he took that. He took it from him. And he released it to the public and everyone got to watch. But he's probably, being hunted right now by the FBI for that.
Well,
but
this is like the Edward Snowden of dudes who play video games and drink Monster Energy.
Exactly. This guy is such a dedicated fan. He did this. He did this for us. So for that, I would like to hang a banner for him.
I think it's amazing that every now and then, and I remember playing at a friend's house some of the old Vice City, San Andreas, some of the older things. I never played GTA 5, and every now and then I'll see it trending, and I'm like, wait, hasn't this game been out for normally trending games are new games. This game came out in 2013. Like they had how many, 4 releases in the 21st century? And then it's been 10 years, 4 and 13 years. And now 10 years later, we might get the 6th one. I'm constantly shocked at the fact that they just keep updating the same one over and over again. So maybe this guy will push video games forward. Yeah. Congratulations on the banner.
Talk about a keyboard warrior. That's a callback from the beginning of the episode.
Hello.
Jack, hang your banner, brother.
So mine actually is going to go counter to a lot of our low-hanging fruit, which is that, believe it or not, we're actually in a decent place in society. There is a big new song that dropped today. I don't know if you guys heard. It's the new U.S. Space Force song. You know that every branch of the military has their own song that plays when you have, I don't know what to call it, a festival of arms or something, and they do the move from here's the Army to the Navy, to the Marines, and all that, right? So the Space Force hasn't had an anthem. They now have one. And it's weird to think that we're at a point in the timeline of Earth where we really are, the Space Force is a real thing besides just a Steve Carell Netflix TV show. And although we don't really have anybody in space that we're worried about right now, maybe someday we will.
Please tell me that it's just a whole bunch of synthesizers and stuff, and it just is like a mad scramble of some dude just hitting random keys on a synthesizer.
Oh, no. This it has words. I'll read. The lyrics aren't long, so I can read it really quickly.
Does it involve To Infinity and Beyond?
No, although it's called Semper Supra, which means always above, which is clever. The lyrics are where the mighty watchful eye, guardians beyond the blue, the invisible front line, warfighters brave and true, boldly reaching into space, there's no limit to our sky, standing guard both night and day, we're the Space Force from on high, which comes straight out of a 2002 young adult fiction novel, if I had to guess, but it's a little catchy. And my biggest takeaway, which I want to hang one banner and tear another one down. This Space Force song was actually a little catchy. I would like to shoot the Star Spangled Banner out into space and come up with a new national anthem, because this song, in comparison to our nationwide anthem, it's a bit of a banger.
So in this episode, go ahead.
I just want to make sure that I'm hanging the banner for the Space Force and also declaring that it should be a front runner for the stylings of our whole country.
In this episode, we have likened Brett Favre to a former U.S. president and said all the reasons why. We have said in a completely anti-patriotic way that we should shoot the national anthem into space.
Yeah, no question. It's such a boring song. We've had 250 years to make better songs. We've done it so many times. We just haven't turned any of them into the anthem.
And for how many times we're forced to hear it?
It's so boring. There are so many other countries. How can we be the country leader of the free world when we're not even a top half national anthem?
Tyler, I know that you are a music label owner and have some artists signed to your label. Do you think they could make a remix of the national anthem for us?
Please.
I don't know if they would be particularly interested in that, but
it's public domain, right?
Debut it here on the podcast.
It's old enough. Has it been entered into the public domain? It's not copyrighted or licensed. Like, you could do that, right?
If Mickey Mouse is public domain and Winnie the Pooh is public domain, the national anthem must be public domain.
I just have a hard time thinking that we can get to a place where our national anthem is top when I'm staying in Canada, and Canada has by far the most electric national anthem ever.
Exactly. Okay. What happened? Miley Cyrus Party in the USA. Let's just make that gets people excited about the country.
Or we could from here on out just say that Fergie's rendition of the national anthem
in the
NBA All-Star game is the version we will play all the time.
Oh my goodness.
Sometimes you have to take drastic actions to get a change that's needed.
Yeah, exactly. Let's swing the pendulum so far the other way that they have to meet us in the middle.
Okay. All right. I love this. Let's finish out. I'll hang a banner with something that's much less fun than what you guys brought to the table today, so I apologize. But I'm hanging a banner for College Game Day and the experience that was had at Appalachian State, because I thought that was a ton of fun. You see so many times College Game Day goes to large campuses. Texas was week 2, Ohio State was week 1, right? And that's fun, and there's tons of tradition and things that happen there. But when you go to App State and you see how absolutely feral these people are about their school, about their culture that they have there, it's really something to behold. I loved the fact that they had some random benefactor come in and offer free years of tuition to 3 students who made really great signs for College Game Day. But then on top of that, and maybe you can tell just from my general look and appearance, I am a gigantic Luke Combs fan, and to have him as the guest picker this past weekend was a ton of fun to watch. The guy commanded the stage and the audience the entire time he was there, and he didn't even graduate. He sings in his songs that I never graduated college.
But that's the thing, is that's the college pride. I mean, Ryan, you and I are from a D3 school, and Tyler, you spent time at Western Kentucky. Like, these are not schools that are going to be front and center on your major broadcast networks. It's like ESPN, NCAA. Look what happens when you take advantage of putting small schools on a big stage. Like, those students, those fan bases will show up. Luke Combs is a music powerhouse. He wasn't like, oh no, I'll only go on if it's like Oklahoma v. Texas. Like, oh, App State, Troy, of course I'm there. Like, why are we not feeding off of this energy? Why do we cater to the same 3% of sports programming?
Bingo. And it should be noted too, Luke Combs had a concert in Green Bay the night before. On that Friday night, he had a concert in Green Bay, flies to Boone, North Carolina, does College Game Day, then flies back to Wisconsin to have a show in what I believe was Milwaukee that night. Again, if you don't cater to just these small factions of college fans, people are, again, feral for their programs and their schools that they believe in. They will go nuts and show up in droves if you just show off different schools. The issue is you only have 13 weeks, and some schools are almost a staple. Like, you have to have a game at Ohio State. You have to have a game that features Alabama, etc., because you need to see Lee Corso put on an elephant head.
Yeah, I mean, I get that point, I guess, about you need to go to Ohio State or you need to go to Alabama, but I don't know. I agree with Jack, where, showcasing these smaller schools is so good for the NCAA. It's so good for college football, especially with the expanded playoff now. You're going to have all these random teams getting into the playoff, and you're not going to know, like, how do I know this team? Oh, well, I saw them on College Game Day once. There's your connection. It makes people so much more interested in watching. And I think it's a key aspect that people need to really, like, hone in on, especially with that. I mean, that was an insane experience for just watching College Game Day. And then the game was unreal.
It was probably the best finish from Saturday. The Hail Mary that almost wasn't a Hail Mary, that turned into a Hail Mary. Like, it was thrown 5 yards short, batted up in the air for whatever reason. But this is why you watch a group of 5 schools, because sometimes things aren't executed to perfection and it leads to absolute insanity. It's one of the draws for the MAC conference and all of the power, or the group of 5 schools rather. You just get to see some insanity sometimes. So it was a great week in sports. I'm happy to have covered it with you two, and I'm happy to have another episode under our belts. I had a ton of fun with this format. I think we might have found lightning in a bottle, and hopefully we can capture it week in and week out, because this was fun.
Yeah, no, another good time. And again, football season, it's not a long one. You don't get as many games as other sports. So, like, let's keep watching football, right? We still got a few more months of this.
Yes. We're here for a good time, not a long time. So any final thoughts, gentlemen, that we need to get across?
I guess one last plug. This is something that I read that ties into some of our conversations in the past. If you get the chance, the Ringer's Kevin Clark brought up an article that he had written in the past about NIL in college sports. And that also feeds into our little last bit there about, showcasing some of the smaller schools and what it takes to be big. So if you're looking for something to read this week, that's a recommended piece of mine.
Awesome. Okay, Tyler, we're good?
I'm good.
I'm good too. We're going to wrap up here on episode 2 of Hangin Banners. Thank you so much for tuning in. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Hangin Banners. You should probably subscribe to us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, or wherever you see or hear your podcast. Make sure to subscribe to us and let us know if you like the episode. We can always change things around and pander to the audience, though I'm not much of a panderer. I do like user-generated content. We'll wrap up episode 2. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Ryan Sartori. That's Jack Coachman, and that's Tyler Witt, and we will be back with episode 3 next week. See you later, guys.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot for that look into sports, Brian.
Yeah.
And when we come back, we'll have one final look at weather. Stay tuned.